Using framework, you will be able to build even bigger project properly. Small project will obviously able to be done using framework or without using framework also. But in larger project, you will be having lots of problem with where are the files, and if someone else comes to your project and they look at it, they'll be like, okay, there are some files in some folder and there are some other files in some other folder. You might remember it that okay, in this folder I have created these files, but they won't be knowing that you have created inside that. They have to manually go there and they have to check it and they have to get used to your project. And eventually, if they work for some other project, they'll have to learn some other new file folder structure in that project also. So that's why using framework in bigger project will help you to avoid all these problems of creating files and where the files are, because in framework already there are some rules where you will be creating files and where you will be keeping some functions and some other functions, classes, etc. So that's why anybody who knows that particular framework, if they come and if they see your project, they'll be able to easily understand where are the files and how they can use your project using that particular framework. That's why when you're building larger project, frameworks are highly recommended. And another thing is, using framework, there is high chance that you will be making less mistakes, because in framework, by default, everything is secure as well as everything is configured as per the stricter rules of that particular framework. So some framework might be flexible in terms of making you restrict using something, but there are some other framework which will restrict you using maybe type safety as well as some kind of folder as well as some kind of creating one workflow. If you are directly using some kind of Node.js project, you can directly send some kind of HTTP request from any file. But if you are using some framework, there are some structure you have to follow. For example, you have to receive everything in routers. Then once routers are ready, you should move it to controllers, and so on. All the logics will be separated. Using this, there is high chance that you will be making less mistakes during the production. In development, you might make mistakes, and that framework will throw you error and you have to fix those errors. Once you are done with fixing those errors, in production it will work just fine, because in development you are restricted to do so many other things, and if you create some wrong folder, it won't be working. If you forgot to export some function, it won't be working. That's why in frameworks like Nest.js or Next.js and all these other frameworks, it's highly likely that you'll be making any kind of mistake. If you made any mistake, the application itself won't work and it will throw error saying you have done some mistake which you have to fix it. That's why if you are beginner and you just learn each and everything related to some kind of technology and then you are learning framework, it's highly recommended to use framework, because you will not be making many mistakes which you might make if you are not using frameworks. Last point I want to make in this particular video is, if you are not using framework, in the end, if your project gets big and successful, it will be end up as a framework itself. So for example, I had some projects which I was working on, and I didn't think that that project might become that much big in terms of functionality. And the moment I started adding up new functionalities, it seemed to me like I could have used some kind of framework, because instead of using framework, I directly using that particular technology. So when I was looking at it, in the end, I thought that okay, I created one framework itself. So instead of doing that, I could have directly used one framework. It would have saved lots of time and it would have been easier for me to upgrade some things inside it. But I didn't do it. That's why I was not able to make use of framework related features. But in the end, whatever I did, it also seemed like one framework only, because I had installed all the other packages which is required by my project, as well as everything was set up nice and neatly. So everything was set, and in the end, it was one of the framework. So instead of ending up with one framework which is unique to you own, instead of that, I would highly recommend you to use some kind of framework, so that everyone in your project will be able to learn it and they'll be able to use it in the future also if they want to use it. That's it for this video. I would highly recommend you to get into framework once you are familiar with the basics concept, because what happens is, if you are not familiar with basics, then if you directly jump into framework, then you won't be able to understand what are the basic features which will be similar throughout this framework, and what are the framework specific features. You will think that okay, this is specific to this framework, but instead that might be some kind of language related or some package related feature. So that's why I would highly recommend you to use framework once you are done with learning basics and you are familiar with it. So that's it for this video, guys, and if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.